Is that okay? That's better. Can we take two again?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Simply.
Do we, as in, maybe we stop recording and then do another one?
Whatever. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Simply, wherein we're living a very minimal lifestyle. We have the very white background.
I was going to say,
the more listeners we get, the more decorations we can afford.
We'll have a painting in the next episode.
If we get enough viewers.
Our goal is 5.
Enough ad money to
goal
fund,
is 5.
to fund some decorations.
If we had 2 views, the parents had 2, 4. Oh, we've exceeded our views. It didn't even take advanced mathematics to add the numbers up.
Well, there you go. So watch the space for more paintings, but welcome everyone for our first episode of Simply. We are very excited to kick this off. So, why don't you introduce yourself?
Say my name.
I can't say your name. You have to introduce yourself first.
I just want to acknowledge how chill you look right now. Like his very...
How do you describe it to the people who can't see?
Very cozy clothes, very laid-back vibes.
I am laying back.
I see no stressed body language.
Why would I be stressed? We're just shooting the shot on the mic.
Exactly. Well, welcome back, because we've re-recorded this.
Yeah, we don't talk about the first.
And we are now, yes, we're not talking about the first recording, and the fact that we're re-recording it shows you that we had some technical difficulties, but we initially recorded in the city in a really nice, beautiful spot, so maybe we can try and make that spot work again.
Maybe we can, but why don't you go introduce yourself?
Yes.
Madam.
Hello, everyone. I am Fauzia, and I am 27 years old. I feel so old saying it out loud. Oh, that got me right in the chest. I am doing my postgraduate degree in the law, and I also work in the law. I am also an Islamic woman, and this is my fiance, Dhruv.
You introducing myself for me?
It's a good segue.
Well, I thought before we get to me, what's one, why don't we do an icebreaker? Like, what's one thing? What's one thing that you like?
Just generally.
That's what, we know you're in the law and you're Islamic. Is there anything else we want to know about you?
That's it. That's my character.
That's it. Oh, apparently I can't give more information than that myself.
Is it like what I like generally? Is that what you're asking?
Well, that's how you introduce yourself. I'm just wondering if you want to give any further information, but that's fine. I'll introduce myself.
I like Pilates and I like reading.
Pilates, yes. I've done that myself. It's
pretty good.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Dhruv. I'm going to follow the same structure. I'm 29 years old. I am in the law, and yeah, it's quite ancient. And I am not Islamic, but I am quasi-Hindu.
Quasi-Hindu? I've never heard that before.
It's a really fancy way of saying my parents are Hindu, but I'm a lot more selective about religion.
I'm quasi-Islamic. You should have told me that beautiful piece of vocabulary before.
Saving it for the audience.
Big brain. I love it. Well, yes.
Yes, and Faz and I have been dating for 8 years to this date. So, yeah, we thought we'd speak about our life and our experiences, and we're glad to have people around for our journey. So, Faz, why don't you start off? What are we going to talk about generally on this podcast and this episode?
I love how in character you are. You're so cute. Well, we started this podcast because we've been dating for a while.
8 years.
8 years. But how many years has it been since we've been engaged? 2? 3 years? 2 years have flown by. And I guess we can talk about the purpose of why we started this podcast, which is more around sharing our experience of being in our 20s and navigating not only the 9 to 5, but navigating a world where there's a lot of bills, a lot of ups and downs, and particularly for those people who are coming from non-traditional backgrounds or relationships, how we navigated that as quasi-religious people.
Rename this the quasi pod. The word of the podcast.
I don't know, like that word kind of puts me on edge a bit, but and yeah, so we thought maybe there are people out there who may have gone into similar experiences of us with financial difficulties. Are you looking at yourself?
What else am I looking at?
I just saw you kind of erasing your eyebrow. Anyways,
Just checking if the video works.
I'm sure it does. I'd hope so. We've had too many technical difficulties. But yes, so anyone who can relate to, who may be in a non-traditional relationship, thrown into the world as well, of navigating a lot of bills, planning weddings, planning 9 to 5s, navigating the corporate world. And yeah, thought it would be very interesting sharing our experience.
Yeah, I mean, got me a big concern when you're saying sharing experiences in your 20s. That means I kind of have to retire anyway. When I turn 30, I'm no longer in the right age demographic. So
Yeah,
I guess you have to look for a new co-host soon.
well, isn't it shocking when now you have to select like a different category of like your age bracket?
To be fair, it's 25 to 34, so I'm still got
I'm still uncomfortable with
still
that.
quite a bit way
Once
to go.
upon a time, we were selecting, the 18 to like 20 something framework.
Exactly. So yeah, we're just keen to just talk and hope people find this interesting or useful in your own lives. But if not, that's totally fine as well. You do you.
Also, just want to put a little disclaimer that these are our experiences and opinions, and how we navigate these experiences we've had is what we're going to be sharing. Maybe not in great detail, but enough for you to get the general gist of emotions that we've gone through.
Yeah, so if you follow us and you screw up, it's not our fault.
It's on you, bro. All right, Drew. So I thought it would be a good idea to go through the agenda that we have planned. Of course, if you know us in real life, we do love mapping out and planning. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about perhaps the online dating world.
Yeah, we'll broaden it a bit. We'll talk about dating and how we meet people generally, and then that will cover online dating too. Okay.
I think so too. So I think maybe like how we met in the online dating world, which will give us a bit of context to tell you that, hey, plot twist, we don't really know too much about the online dating world, but we know from friends.
Well, yeah, we've heard stories, but like we can talk about society trends. We're plugged into the public sphere, as they call it.
True.
So we can talk a bit about it.
Yes.
So yeah, let's start with how we met.
Yes.
So, do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
I am happy to give you my version. I don't know if your version differs.
I'll jump in. So
You could fill the gaps. So Driv and I met over 8 years ago, and that's excluding our dating period, obviously. We met through a program called the Peer Network Program at UTS, and that's essentially a program where you help newbies settle into uni and show them around campus. Typically, it's a 1-month program, and you have what you call oldies, so people who are more tenured at their volunteering, and people who are newies, which was me at the time, and Drew was an oldie. So we were in a friend group, and I think through bands and everything, we just ended up becoming a bit more closer, I guess. There was obviously friendliness, I guess you could say, to begin with, and bands, until we realized, oh, actually, this person gets me. And there was a bit of chemistry and good dynamic there.
that is a very positive version of the story.
What part of it is negative? Sorry?
I mean, the way you've described it to others, this is very sanitized.
Sorry, throwing me under the bus.
But yes,
Yes.
yes, that's how we met through university programs, so similar to what other universities run. But the UTS orange shirt version of it. I think it was a bit of a different time back then, 8 years ago. In terms of how we met. I think both of us, I guess, we weren't looking for a relationship at the time. It just kind of fell into place randomly, I don't think.
It's probably one of, I'm not going to say only, but I'm just going to say in this context, one of the only things in life that has fallen onto our plate, like we're holding a silver platter. Dating has gone very well. We weren't on any dating apps. We weren't seeing anyone. It was completely out of our question. Both of us enrolled into the program in hopes to meet new people, find new friends, get more involved in the uni. So there was no intention of that initially.
Yeah, so what was your first impression of me?
My first impression was, I remember we finished training and it was the funniest thing ever. This was the speed friending. Actually, I'll go back to the speed friending.
Well, what is training for the audience? What are we training for?
Training for volunteers is basically allowing them to understand what kind of shifts they'll be scheduled on during the orientation period, whether you're serving coffee to people, whether you're mingling or encouraging people to sign up for different programs. It's just a whole variety of what you can be trained on, but it's really exclusive to this program, and can't really tell my doubts about this program because it really did help us open up as individuals. So one of the training days involved speed friending, where you had a group of people in a circle and then you had a second group of people in that circle, and basically you'd have a minute to talk to the person opposite of you, and then after that minute both circles would rotate anti-clockwise. And I was speaking to our good friend Linus. Hello, Linus. And Drew was up next, and I remember it was the end of the however many minutes that we were allowed to speed friend, and you were going to rotate so you can speak to me, and you looked so bummed. Anyways, fast forward, we were all in like this friend group, and we went to get bubble tea, and it's so funny because that was also our first time getting bubble tea.
I know.
Together.
Don't expose us like that.
Yeah, you're the one who didn't even get pearls in his bubble tea. That's blasphemy, bro. But anyway, we actually took each other's bubble tea.
I was in much better shape back then, so much more of a health credit.
Honestly, same. Yeah. This is what the life does to you. But yeah, I just remember my first impression of you was you kept looking at me, and I was like, I've just had too many creepy, weird experiences to know that I don't know this guy at all. But he keeps looking at me. But then we shared some really cute stuff, like for example, like I said, you took my bubble tea by accident, I took yours by accident, we laughed a bit. And it's funny because I know my family knows how much of a germaphobe I am, but the fact that I still drank out of your straw, which was my bubble tea order with pearls, by the way, was surprising even to me. And that's when I'm like, interesting. Anyways, first impression of Drew, very friendly, very out there with people. He was very welcoming and one of the best oldies, I can say. Like, you really made us feel very comfortable in understanding the program and where to go.
Well, that's good to know. I was described as a creep for a bit, so now we get to the positive side, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, I think my first impressions of Fauzi over there was that she was very bubbly. She just loved talking to people, and she wouldn't stop talking to people, and she would just...
Big yapper.
Yeah, yapper. You just yap all day, and she used to just know everyone for some reason, and... I mean, you probably already know her now. If you're watching this, you've probably seen her face on billboards or something. Like she's just everywhere. She knows everyone. She talks to everyone.
I'm curious about people.
Yeah.
like I was with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So my impression was she seemed very caring of other people, and um, I didn't know that she was a germaphobe until I started dating her, and then I realized she's got like OCD.
Actually, it's true, guys. Like, it's actually pretty bad. Like,
So like,
we need to do a separate episode.
so sometimes don't judge a book by its cover. Cover page is good, and then first page you're like, oh shit.
And
Am I allowed to swear on this?
Sure, why not? It's our podcast.
We'll
Anything
tag.
Derogatory, of course, trying
we'll
to
put
avoid.
an explicit tag. Or we can just censor that out, maybe.
I'll just put a duck over your mouth.
Yeah, put a duck
I don't know how to do that. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, if you listen to this, we figured it out. But yeah, I thought she was very bubbly, very, very, very sweet. Yeah, and like she was very friendly with everyone. She took the time to know people, and I really respected that. It's not easy to kind of jump into a situation like that and just fit in seamlessly.
I think also like the general intention of people joining that program was to make friends and put themselves out there. I think that's the consensus that the people that we still talk to or still are connected with who joined the program say they joined it for the purpose of meeting new people and getting out of their bubble. So really, and this kind of falls into what we'll talk about in just a minute or so, the power of conversations and talking to people and going out of your way to was that really out there to say the power?
I mean, yeah, I guess the power of conversations. But before we get to the power of conversations generally, I guess I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. I think we both said earlier you weren't on any dating app. You weren't looking for a relationship at the time. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't think you were either.
I wasn't either. But how do you think things would have been different if we we had that exact same situation in 2025? Would that change the prospects of what happened, or would things have just ended up going exactly the same way?
That's a big question. I think that we can talk a little bit about what dynamics were back then. That might answer your question to what they are now.
Sure,
perhaps.
Go for it.
So I think during our time, we mentioned that obviously we weren't intentionally looking for a relationship, but back in what was it, 2017. Oh my god, Jesus, that's all. Yes, in 2017 I feel like there was a lot more emphasis in meeting people through programs, in volunteering your time to attend these programs, or just volunteering generally. So I think people were definitely more out of their bedrooms before COVID and really getting to know one another. And I felt like there was some kind of, I'm going to say this and don't laugh at me, harmonious energy that there was before COVID. And all of a sudden after COVID, I feel like we're all so cautious about how we use our time that many people, or a majority, aren't too interested in volunteering or maybe going out of their way.
And just calling out Gen Z.
No, I'm one of them. I'm one of them. No, but I think people are more precious with their time. And I totally understand that because we live in a day and age where things are always like fast, hustle and bustle, and appointments here and there, and this general anxiety of like, I need to do a lot in a day to try and set myself up for success, or just the pressure that's imposed on us as a young generation as well to get to the other goalpost. So I think maybe the dynamics back then were more meeting people in person with dating. We had COVID, everyone shifted online, and now we're kind of in that weird lingo between online dating, there's not many fish in the sea, versus, do you know anyone? Please let me know. This is my criteria. Versus, I went on a date. I don't know how they are. I don't know if I should call it off. So I think just in terms of your question, I don't know how much would have changed. I think we were just in a fortunate place where luck did fall our side. But I think it's okay to say that if we didn't enroll ourselves into this program, this relationship may not necessarily have occurred. We may not have met each other.
I think that's very fair. I think it's more in the sense of as well. What do you think if you were on the dating apps at the time? Would that have impacted how you wanted to proceed with this relationship? Would that have made you, focused on like maybe more hesitant to commit when you have perhaps a lot more options outside of me?
Yeah. I think culture plays a lot, especially when you are growing up in an Islamic household. And we'll obviously talk about this perhaps in the next episode about non-traditional relationships.
Can't spoil any episode.
We can't give any spoilers, but perhaps I had a more conservative take on dating where I thought that I wouldn't find anyone until I would finish uni. I just never really thought about dating as well. I was asked on dates, but I always never felt right to say yes, and that didn't come from a cultural perspective. It was more like my gut was saying this person isn't for me and I don't really want to go into that path. So I think dating apps, I never really downloaded anything. I just didn't really care, if I'm honest with you. I think I was just more kind of concerned about making sure my house and my towns were built on Townville. Oh no, Cityville on Facebook. Like, that was my concern.
Farmville? Cityville?
Farmville was the best, though.
Okay, Farmville. Okay. Cityville, okay.
I wonder, they probably still do. Anyways, but yeah, how about you? I mean, I don't know. I'll pose the same question to you, really.
Well, I mean, for a guy, it's a bit different, I think, at least from what I've heard out there from friends and just what you see in some of the data and what you hear. It's generally to the effect that guys struggle a bit more in online dating in the sense that it's harder for them to match with females, and you can be, it's only really a certain top percentage of guys, top percentage haven't even defined that can get matches. So I mean, if you want to talk about my perspective of how things would be different, I think I would have liked to say that I would have jumped on that opportunity to do something in person, because
like in person
dating? Yeah, because the odds aren't in your favor. But at the same time, so I think it can be quite disheartening in the online world. So if I was in this situation 8 years later, I'd like to think that I would try and take advantage of it. But I also know that I think the idea of physical rejection is a lot more hard to bear than online rejection.
That's very true, because now the rejection's just a swipe. So you don't really feel that emotional connection to that person.
Yeah, or even if they connect with you, right? I mean, you want to talk about trends like ghosting and bread crumbing and all of that stuff, right? Like, a lot of those terms, go over my head a bit, but I mean, I think it's a lot harder to ghost someone, in our situation. We're volunteering, right?
Yeah.
You probably can't just ghost me. Like,
I think
you see me, like, it's a lot different, right?
Well, I think in this day and age as well, like, it's so easy to ghost someone because there's so many social media platforms and so many excuses you can bring forward. Just, saying, oh, I've been so busy at work. No one really has no one can really question that you're busy at work. It's not really their business. But I think also online dating, there wasn't too much of an emphasis back in the days on that. So I think just kind of continuing the question as well is, what have you heard from your friends about online dating, family or friends?
Well, I guess I'm mainly in the males. I have to speak to my guy friends. Although I've heard a few things from females as well, but at least from the guy's perspective, there's a lot of, I feel, dissatisfaction with the whole process. I think it's hard to get matches generally, and it's hard, I think, as well, to turn or convert those matches into relationships.
I think that's what women would say as well. Like, I think it's safe to say that we're both hearing conflicting things. Like, I'm hearing from a lot of my girlfriends who are saying there's not enough fish in the sea, and a lot of people just don't really want that connection or don't want to think about marriage. They just want that intimacy. But you're also kind of hearing a similar thing where maybe females aren't interested in them, or they're a bit more kind of picky to what they want.
Yeah, so I'll just jump on the picky part of things, and maybe you can let me know if your girlfriends have a different kind of view to this. But at least from what I hear and what I see, and what makes some logical sense, I guess, is that, you know, I generally what's borne out in the data as well is that females in general have more matches than males. I mean, more guys are more likely to swipe on females than females are to swipe on males. So, in that sense, you know, slightly crude, but there's, you know, a female has a lot more male options and a male has a lot less female options in terms of matches.
It's hard to quantify that data, though.
Well, that's what I'm just following the science, as they say. So,
but also, speaking of stats, like, we have a stat in front of us where 49% of Australians aged 18 to 49 have tried online dating, which is a huge percentage.
Oh, it is a huge percentage, right? And that's the thing, right? So let's take steps back here, and you know, whether it's 49%, who knows? Like, data is data, right? Like, it could be somewhat wrong, but I think we can all agree, right, that there is a lot of people on these dating apps, and I think if you go back 50, 100 years, well before we were born, but you know, when people, if you know, even,
I love how you're slowly sinking, by the way.
I'm just acting like older, and it's like, oh no, my back is done.
Hurt your tailbone or your back?
Yeah, I'll sit up a bit.
I was gonna say,
in our very minimal room, minimalist room.
Well, it's so interesting. I think, like, you raise a good point. There's a few points. One is that, just quickly going back to what I said, in the people don't want that connection or aren't thinking about marriage, there's a huge, or what we understand, the hookup culture and casual dating, where people may just want that feeling of connection to fulfill some void for the moment, but they don't want that permanency. And second of all, I don't know, this is what I've heard from my friends, and obviously, again, we're not well versed in the online dating, but also you raised a good point where, is there actually bad fish in the sea, or are we just over selective or very picky about who we're going towards?
So many questions. And look, the first one about filling a void socially, I think
it's like watching Severance. You come out with more questions.
Yes, the work is mysterious and important. I think the first question is the subject of a future episode, which is, what voids do we have? I mean, I think that's going to sidetrack us for an hour, so I'm going to park that for the moment.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to the fish in the sea, which I think is more relevant to this one, or more directly relevant. Just before, as I was saying before, you know, 100 years ago, you're dating people in your school, your neighborhood, your workplace.
100 years ago?
50 to 100 years ago. I could be wrong in time frames, but just generally speaking, you know, your circle of people you date is very limited to, like, pretty much common places where you live, where you work, things like that.
Like that in-person connection.
Yeah, because, you know, it wasn't as globalized communications.
It wasn't as digital as it was back then, which shows the impact of technology.
Exactly right. So, you know, at that time, yeah, you met your neighbor, and if they were good enough, you're like, sweet, you know, let's get married. You know, you didn't really think too much about these things, you know. But now it's obviously a lot different in the sense that,
bit of mingling with the milk boy.
You know, if we agree with what you said and what, like I said, what the stats say, which is, like, you know, around half the people are on dating apps, you know, suddenly the pool of people rises a lot, and, you know, there's this concept in psychology called choice fatigue, where if you have a lot of choices, chances are you're going to be more dissatisfied with the final outcome than you've had limited amount. So for example, if you're ordering ice cream and there's only 2 flavors, versus if you're ordering ice cream and you have to choose between 30 flavors, generally speaking, what some experiments have shown is that you're more likely to be dissatisfied by having more options, because perhaps you're thinking, well, I got this option, it might have been nice, but what if I got this option instead? Maybe I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But if you only have a limited amount of options, that doesn't really factor in.
Kind of narrows the pool, but also that's a good point, because I feel like when you have more options as well, people tend to get overwhelmed and just completely not do anything about it at all.
Yeah, exactly right. So I think from the male perspective, going back to what I've heard about online dating, I think in that context of the dating pool is just significantly increased. And I think we talk ourselves as non-traditional, and I think we are in a sense, but also not in a sense we met at a university, and I think that's, when you think about it, it's a very traditional way to meet someone. So,
well, I also think it's very interesting how, like Bumble, for example, where the female makes the first move. I think it's interesting, and there's more than likely studies going on around the psychology of males and females in a dating dynamic. So perhaps they're creating these applications where, for example, the females make the first move in hopes that it may encourage some kind of behavioral change and continued pattern of seeing each other. It's very, very interesting. I think like online dating has been a huge emphasis, particularly I find that people our age as well are starting to hit that kind of mid-20s mark, or like in their 20s, and are starting to associate what they want to do by a particular age. So the timeline is, I want to date someone, but I need to see them as my spouse, which is completely fine. That's absolutely fine. But now people feel more pressure to kind of get married, buy a house, have kids. It's so weird how the dynamics, that was a dynamic back then a few years ago, and then it kind of relaxed a bit, and now it's like, oh, I am taking this very seriously now.
Well, I think I think that's right, but I think it was also always a dynamic way people had timelines. I mean, I think what's maybe changed is that people are meeting other people a bit later in life. So, now that meeting someone at university or high school or work, getting married at an early age, you're getting married at a later age. So now you're seeing, I think, a lot more of those timelines creep in, and especially with women who have more of a biological clock than males. I think that's...
And there's obviously a bit more factors as well. Like, we can't speak for all the factors, but I know from my understanding of speaking to a lot of my girlfriends is that there's a lot of hesitancy in being vulnerable to someone. Some people aren't comfortable enough to connect with someone, obviously, that they don't know. They don't know what stage of dating or how many dates they should go on before they become vulnerable. And also, I think a lot of people are very much starting to, or maybe not starting, but rather associating themselves of, I've accomplished this much, I need someone who matches that and no one below that. Or maybe they have some kind of threshold where, oh, okay, if they do that, it's okay, as long as it's not completely down the drain. Like, if I'm working a 9 to 5 and earning good money, they need to earn double that. If they're earning a little less than me, that's fine. So it kind of feeds into the, I don't really want to call it pickiness, but there is kind of some kind of self-branding you bring towards dating, which I think that affects your perception of other people and who you accept.
Yeah, that's a very good point, the self-branding thing. And I think, there's a lot to that. And I think that I feel like that's more of a thing on the female side, where I think females who are very career focused, I think generally want to date males who are roughly career focused. And then I think on the male side, you have definitely more of a traditionalist view of, or some people, obviously you can't speak for everyone, but that's the view of, I need to be the breadwinner, or I need to earn more than the woman in the relationship. So that means that I can take care of her. And in a sense, that is a very traditional view. But if one does adopt that traditional view.
Yeah.
I think this is when you go back to the point of fish in the sea, right? So if you're a female and you're earning, a pretty above average salary or a good salary, and you, in a sense, you're right, and that does limit the dating pool a bit, because some males, you're essentially competing for males that need to earn more than you so that they feel more secure, or it aligns with their views, or whatever it may be. And that's, I think that's right. And I do think it is a bit of a problem, but it's one of those things where you don't even know where to start in terms of solutions, really.
Yeah, I mean, it comes to the point of where we talked about, like, a lot of options and people evaluating their options or walking away, then returning back to it because they're like, what do I actually want? So I do think that dating apps really help facilitate how you view dating. I think it really helps facilitate that whole dating process. It allows you to develop yourself as well, like knowing what you want, what you're trying to find in a person, and also perhaps maybe areas where you think, oh, maybe I could be better at this. So I think while dating apps, and look, we don't know the percentage of failures of dating apps, but just from our friends, from the conversations I've had, they've felt very much like, oh, this whole experience has allowed me to understand what I'm finding in a partner, which I think is quite important and, just really good. But I wanted to talk about this, where it goes back to your point of, we have a bunch of stuff about online dating that we were looking into, where psychologists note that an overabundance of options, which goes back to your ice cream example, online can lead to an objectification mindset, which kind of talks about the selective preferences, and decreased desire to commit to one partner, which is what we were talking about, where you may not necessarily feel like you want to give your vulnerability to a person.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing where the grass is always green on the other side, right? And if you, like, say, if your options are limited, it's less likely naturally that you'd feel that way compared to if you have all the options in the world. But just kind of going back to what you said about people finding themselves, I mean, do you think there's a possibility that people might be too rigid in terms of what they're looking for? And this person has to tick these 10 boxes.
Yes. And it's interesting because obviously it's a person by person basis. But I have spoke to people who have an absolutely bloody ginormous list, and I'm speaking like, they come to me and they say, this is what I'm looking for in a partner. Is this enough? It's more than enough, brother. Like, cull it down. But look, I think it's a case by case basis, but I think, again, online dating is quite facilitative to that whole experience of finding someone. And really importantly, it's fed into the idea and concept that online dating is okay. It used to be seen as a stigma, but now it's like, oh, cool, where'd you meet this person? Cool. We've had family and friends who've met through dating apps as well, and they've found success after trying to find people in person and different apps. And especially when you live a busy lifestyle, and a lifestyle where you may not have much time to, like, go to networking events or do volunteering, or if you weren't particularly a person who had time or really thought about volunteering during university, people tend to resort to online dating, and it's great to facilitate the process. So
it's like the Netflix of dating, and in person's like the movie theater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Right.
If that's how you describe it, I'll go with it. But I thought maybe we'll segue into just a summary of what we know. We know that there's not too many fish in the sea from, I don't really like that line, but that's honestly all we've been hearing from everyone who's trying to find a relationship.
We've talked about it, but I think
we don't know.
I think the fish are increasing. I think there's more fish than ever. It's just that people want different cuts and breeds of salmon. It's like, I want this 2010 Tasmanian salmon. You know, that's...
You've been really hooked onto the salmon example.
just
I
saying-
love it. It's great.
I'm just saying there's a lot more fish in the sea. It's just that now we can filter for fish. It's like a database, right, of options. You can sort by color, by age, by... I don't know if you can sort by weight, but you can sort by all these other things.
Wait.
You can sort by things, is my point, you know, and you have like
if
all
there's
this...
one thing about Drew is that he loves his analogies, and we're all here for
Well,
it.
this is called Simply
At
Simple.
least I am. It's simply simple.
The whole
But
idea,
is it?
the
Is
whole
it
the whole
simple?
idea is analogies to
Exactly.
simplify it.
Is it actually simply simple? But I guess maybe we'll list maybe 5
Sorry, I
red.
derailed your point. Please continue.
Was I talking to a point before? Sorry.
You were to summarize, and
Once you kind of hit like that
and then I
bracket of your
disagreed with-
20s, you
I
start
disagreed
getting
with the summary. So
the forgetful mentality. Red flags and green flags. Maybe we'll list each 5 in
yeah,
total.
we can do a rapid round.
Yeah. Or red flag is probably when that person doesn't show any emotional interest in you. In other words, they're quite demanding. They want to see you for your date and they don't care if you're sick.
The opposite, when they're too nice, they acquiesce too much.
Is that a green flag or a red flag?
It's a red flag, you know. You got to watch out for those people.
Red flag is perhaps someone maybe just not an organizer. Like they're not really initiating dates.
Definitely your red flag.
Absolutely. Very individualized. All personal opinions on this podcast. But maybe someone who isn't really organized in dates. There's someone who doesn't really plan out where to go, perhaps, or maybe what to do as a fun date idea. I think that, you know, it can be chill, but if they're completely lost for what to do, I feel like that's kind of de-incentivizing to attend a date.
That's very fair. I mean, what's a green flag, do you think?
A green flag. I love how he listed 2 reds, but I'm sure they'll come.
Yeah, let's end on a positive note. Like, what are some
I love
things?
that.
Yeah.
Green flag is probably, I'd go back to my first point where someone is quite understanding of your circumstances. So, for example, someone may be like, oh, I can't make this date or time because, you know, I have a family commitment. Can we do X, Y, Z? If the other person responds in a positive light, by all means, you, especially as a female, especially as a daughter to a dad who would certainly want someone to care for me, like this little cupcake here, you want someone to obviously care for you and look out for you.
Yeah, and I'd say another green flag is if that person has a dog. They're taking care of something, so
That is true.
They show some capability there.
Like a dog, or maybe they have a younger sibling.
Yeah, younger sibling. That's also a good one. You know, if they've demonstrated that caring capability in some way, I think that's a good green flag. Obviously, your mileage may
Yes.
vary, but it's...
I think also on that caring point as well, as a female, if the male has sisters, if they have great care for their sisters, or they a mum's boy, I guess, not overly a mum's boy, but more like they show that respect for women. I think that's a huge green flag.
We should do a study of how many guys with sisters and a dog and what their success rate
And
is.
sisters and a dog.
Yeah, because that way they have sisters and they have 2 green flags.
That'd be interesting.
And being mamas, I think they'll be like, they're surely all like married, very happily married, and found the woman of their dreams.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
theory. So
That's cool.
yeah, if you're listening to this and you have sisters and a dog, just rest in peace. Knowing that you're going to be just fine, and women will
Just
love all
ride
your
the
green
wave.
flags. Ride the wave, you'll be just fine.
All right. Well,
Yeah, should we start wrapping up?
we absolutely should. Well, I think that was a little intel into who we are, how we met. We talked a little bit about a world, the online dating world, to which we don't have a lot of knowledge on, but we have enough to know.
Well, I think we talked
About it.
I think we talked about meeting people and
Yes.
dating generally. So we do know about that. Especially you. You know a lot about meeting people. So,
That sounds a bit weird.
well, in the sense that you talk to a lot of
I
people.
like to socialize.
Yeah, very.
But yeah, I guess we kind of looked at, I think it would be quite interesting perhaps for one of our friends or someone that we may know who's currently on dating apps to talk about the experiences. Maybe people who've been on different apps and they're still trying to find someone to get their opinion of what varies in each app and the experiences. But yeah, we thought this podcast would be quite interesting to talk about different topics, lifestyle related. As we said, this is a really fun and creative thing that we've wanted to do. But anyways, this will be edited. But yes.
Anyways, we jump cut, so we're back to the present.
we're
where did we end?
Like we said, high level.
High level. Yeah, so we're doing this because it's fun and creative. And we're excited. And like I said, you like it, that's great. If you don't like it, that's great. Do what you want in your time. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. And we will try and record on a somewhat regular schedule, depending on life and things.
Depends on the vibe.
But if you have any comments, if you want us to talk about anything, just let us know, and we're happy to listen and see how we can fit in. If you want to be a guest, let us know as well. We're quite open to having people on.
We have some ideas.
Yeah, we might tap a few people on the shoulder, so
don't be scared.
Yeah.
Very nice.
But yeah, I think that's about it.
I think we might want to talk about non-traditional relationships in the next episode, which
maybe.
Just a spoiler alert. It's a huge fat topic.
Maybe we won't now because we want to keep people guessing.
Oh, maybe we might not even talk about it, maybe and we might just
maybe we won't even have a next episode just to like really surprise people.
I don't know. That's stretching it a bit.
Anyways, thank you for joining, dialing in. What do you call it? Playing back? What's the word? What's the word?
Millennials
What's the phrase?
Viewing, watching?
Watching. Is it watching? Listening, watching, yeah. Have you enjoyed? I know we said that a few times, but
you've lost it, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm just stalling at this point.
It's okay. I can get a bit close. But we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Soon. Thank you. See you later.